Welcome to A Humanistic Perspective. I'm one of your three obliged hosts, Chad Castilla, and we are more than happy that you could be joining us today. We're going to go around the room and introduce ourselves real quick, and then we'll tell you a little more about the show and get going from there. All right, let's start down here.
Hey, I'm Lily. I'm here today.
Share something about yourself for the people. Just something real quick.
I'm in cannabis
Maybe where you're
school,
at with your life, yeah.
and I'm gonna open a cannabis bakery.
Cool. All right, Ethan.
Well, good morning, Chad. Thank you for the intro. Thank you, Lily, for joining us as well. My name is Ethan, and I'm more than pleased to be here this morning. I'm very interested in diving into this topic. So
Yeah, sure. You want to share something quickly about yourself for the audience? Maybe where you're at in your life, career-wise?
Sure. I'm 17 years old. I have 3 businesses now and a few other projects I'm working on, and that's about it. Yeah.
Very nice, very nice. And my name is Chad Castilla, of course, one of your many hosts here on the Humanistic podcast. What am I sort of doing with my life? Where am I at? Fun fact, I work with Ethan and we own a company called Prismatic Solutions. So yeah, we're more than happy to bring you guys a show today. So let me tell you and share you a little bit about what a Humanistic Perspective show really is. So our show is really about a Generation Z perspective and take on this crazy thing that we call a world that we're living in. And really, the show is just an opportunity for us to openly speak and really have some intellectual and critical conversations about the state of our world and really where we think we're going next. So we're excited to give you a glimpse of into what life like ours is and what being an entrepreneur really is like from a young age and really living it. I think a major thing about the show is really showing that you live it and not just saying it, doing it. So we're really excited for the opportunity and everything that we plan to offer to you guys with a humanistic perspective. And now let's talk a little bit about the show, really the episode that we're looking at today. Ethan, you want to share everyone what the title of today's episode is?
The title of episode 1 of the Human Perspective is Modern Medicine, the Future of Mental Health.
Yeah, so what we really are trying to
What's
get
that
at
mean?
here with today's episode is analyzing, taking a deeper look, and breaking down mental health and sort of microdosing, psilocybin, LSD, MDMA, and other types of psychoactive substance psychedelics for treatment and for dealing with mental health and dealing with depression, anxiety, and other things. So we're really excited to hit that. But before we get into that, we'd like to thank our sponsors. So this being our second episode and really the first episode for the public, we have an episode 0 if you want to go back and hear that. We don't have a sponsor, and if you'd like to hear your ad placement here, or you really think that there's some value to be brought to your consumers from having a placement here, we would love to share the show and share the space with you. So if you're looking to contact us, feel free to reach us at ahumanisticperspective@gmail.com. All right, moving forward to our opening segment, we always like to start the day with just some good vibes and some coffee or tea. So I'm actually going to go around the room and pour out what we're drinking on today. Today we have a special blend from Big Shoulders Coffee. Today we are drinking on their Bold Slugger flavor. So very excited to try that here with Ethan. And Lily, you want to share with everyone sort of why you're not drinking the coffee with us? Sort of what's going on with that?
So I don't usually like coffee. I usually am more of like a green tea type of person. And a while ago, my family, well, my mom and my cousin Katie, started drinking this apple cider vinegar type of thing. And I like drinking it every morning just because it boosts my metabolism, kind of clears out my digestive system, if you know what I mean. And it just basically helps me just get through my day, gives me a little boost of energy, kind of like the coffee does for you guys, but just a little bit different and just kick starts my metabolism. So basically what it is it's 1 packet of green tea, 2 teaspoons of apple cider vinegar, 1 teaspoon honey, and a whole lemon.
Wow.
Nice, yeah.
Wow.
How's it been working for you? What are you thinking about it?
When you're doing it consistently, you definitely can see results. You can feel your metabolism burning. You can feel the fat burning off of you while you're just chilling. But
How long have you been doing that?
I've been doing it for a long time now. I actually can't remember when I started it, but it's just been on and off throughout the years. I definitely was going hard in November in the earlier months of the school year, but I fell off kind of December. Now we're back on the track and working out too. So.
Yep. We got up this morning. All of us hit the gym. Ethan, what time were you at the gym? Just to give people some context.
I was at the gym this morning. I actually was late, but it was late because I was actually just doing research on some of the things we're speaking on this morning. So I got to the gym around 5 this morning, yeah. I swam from about 5 to, I would say, 6. Oh, yeah, like about 6:10.
Nice.
Then I shower, and then I head on over here to get ready for the podcast. So I usually start my days around 4:30. I got a little bit of a late start today, so.
Yeah. Mind you, he said late start. Typically, my days start at like 8 o'clock. And now I'm just like changing all of that. So now I'm getting up at 5:30 to 5:45
Yeah,
with
which is
you
awesome.
guys. Yeah.
Habit correction is definitely super important. Coming into the new year, like
Difficult.
it's a great time, right? I don't necessarily believe in New Year's resolutions, but I do think that when we come up and we're starting something fresh, and the feeling of like, all right, it's gonna be a restart. We're gonna go again. That feeling is just so rewarding and is the perfect timing. It aligns so well with like trying to kickstart or restart your habits.
Plus,
Yeah.
I'm just glad that I have at least a week until college starts back up again, and I can
Mm.
just be dead during the day, and then next week I'll be on a schedule.
Yeah,
Yeah,
right.
see, for me, I guess I'm not like it's not hard for me to wake up early in the
Mhm.
morning. It's hard, but that's where you push yourself, because but as soon as like I jump in that pool and I start swimming, it's like I'm awake, and you
Yeah.
feel alive
That's
and you're ready
exactly
to
it.
conquer
No,
the day.
I was surprised with
second you're
how
done.
awake I am right now. I was like, damn, I
What
thought I
time
wanted
is
to take
it?
a nap.
8 a.m.
8 a.m. We got a little bit of a late start because of showers this morning. But so if anyone's wondering, let's go for our first sips on this coffee. Let's give our first interpretations on camera.
Yeah, go for it, Chad. I'm gonna
Okay.
wait a sec.
Yeah, it's
Second,
really
but
hot.
I guess I'll tell a little bit about my experience. So coffee for me, I guess, what my day looks like is about when I get to about 9 a.m., I'm usually starting to drag out a little bit. So that coffee is just a nice refresher.
Mhm.
Usually after I get out of the gym, I do like a protein shake and stuff just to kind of relax those muscles.
It's a really nice flavor profile. It's pretty mild, I would say, in its taste. It's dark, so it's got a nice flavor to it. It's not too overwhelming, but not too underwhelming. Also, it's got a great full body. The perfect cup of Joe for a January or a winter morning when you just are looking for your consistent. I could daily drink this. It's not too strong.
This is this is definitely a daily drinker. You can have this cup maybe 2-3 times a day. Not like a
exactly.
morning wake up.
Yep, yeah. I was recently drinking this Colombian coffee that was a blonde roast, actually. So it was really interesting, and it was really bright. But it was one of those coffees. It was so strong. It just
Blonde
really good
roasts.
profile. But yeah,
Do you
blonde
know
roast
the
is-
difference between all
Yeah,
the
so
roasts?
I'm not familiar.
you're
I guess.
blind.
I
Okay.
think Chad's made my. I used to not drink black coffee.
Yeah, so we're drinking like a medium dark roast. So it's like your middle of the ground. Your darks you tend to have more flavor, less caffeine. Your blondes have extreme amounts of caffeine. Usually, still great flavor, but a different flavor. Usually brighter notes. Usually more citrusy on the tongue, almost in a sense. And yeah, so it will be exciting to experience throughout the show the differences in coffees. And
Yeah, no, I really don't mind this. Like,
yeah, Ethan
It's-
actually, it was his first time today. He tried out French pressing, which is the technique that we use for brewing our coffee on set. It's simple, and it's always a good cup of Joe.
yeah, it really makes a difference when you grind your own beans. I mean, now I understand when
100%.
people say like, "Hey, Starbucks,
Why the
their
fuck-
beans are
yeah.
burned." Like,
No,
you can
literally,
taste the difference.
I hate to be those people, but episode 1, we're gonna call people out, and that's just how it's got to be. Because we're honest, it's about transparency here on the show, and we're not big fans of Starbucks. Not really.
I actually used to be. I think before Chad
Mm.
came back from college, I was at Starbucks probably twice a day, and that was when my
Damn.
brother told me, "Why are you paying
So
$20
much for
a
burnt
day
beans."
for two?"
right, like by the end of the week, you've ranked up a $45 tab,
Yeah.
and you only
Mm.
had burnt coffee that was mostly
Yeah,
sugar.
it's so tragic. It's so tragic how they just wrap people into that.
Sure,
But don't get me wrong. I think they're like
They
that's
have
like a
good
dessert
marketing, though.
place. They do
It is.
very good marketing.
yes.
Very good
I would
marketing.
say if I'm going for a flavored beverage that I want to be a sweet treat or something special,
I go to
I would go to
Starbucks.
Starbucks.
Yeah,
It's actually
and I'd
don't-
stay away from
it's
coffee.
honestly more of an experience, and I think people use it
Yeah.
as more of a label.
yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
It's that's something we'll talk about too. Hopefully more as we go on is marketing and
Yeah.
an effective brand and effective use of that throughout a global presence.
No,
So-
you just feel good drinking Starbucks just because of the brand label, you know?
sure.
I mean,
sure.
and don't get me wrong. It's not like it doesn't taste good. But again, I think it's more of a dessert. Like if I'm going there,
Yeah.
you can get a specialty drink.
Well,
and
there's
that's like
certain things that you can get that taste really good, you know? But just the
Sure.
coffee itself, typically, it doesn't taste too good. But once you add all that
Yeah.
sugar and everything else, it tastes fantastic.
Now, Chad, what are we paying per cup of coffee here now?
Per cup of coffee. See, so this is actually a Christmas gift, so I'm not sure, but it came in a double pack where you got two sets of beans to try from the Bold Slugger family
Okay, so
line.
that size of beans,
It's
what is
about
a typical-
$30. I would say
Okay.
I think that pack was like $35 to $45.
And we didn't even make a dent at the first time.
dent,
So that will
yeah.
last. That could last what, a month?
Yeah, my first
Easily.
pack I'm almost out of. It's the Colombian roast from them, and it's I've still got probably half a bag, and I've had it open for a month, and I've been drinking it pretty much every other day. I try not to do every day just because the break. So we do the show Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and on Tuesday, Thursdays, I'm trying not to drink coffee because that 1 day break actually makes it more effective on the days I do use it, and on the days I don't, my metabolism tends to notice,
Sure, and that's
and
just
it
a
kicks-
tolerance
it
to the
kicks,
caffeine.
yeah, and it
Any-
helps.
Anything is gonna build up.
So, all right, yeah, I think this was a great introduction, and why don't we get into the meat and the bulk of what this episode is?
Sure.
Okay, cool. Let's do it.
Sounds good.
So, welcome to episode 1 of A Humanistic Perspective. We are today focusing on modern medicine and the future of what is mental health and plant medicine. So, for a little background for everyone listening in today, psychedelics and a revolution in that industry is upon us in the United States and quite literally globally. I see, and not only see, but hear and have read tons and numerous arguments for psilocybin and other psychedelics moving into the space for mental health, with treating things such as anxiety, treating things such as depression, to helping even with microdosing and helping with energy and boosting, similar to how we just were talking
Or
about
even
with coffee.
helping regular smokers quit smoking.
Yeah.
I think it's kind of crazy how far, how much more effective this is than certain other treatments for just regular smokers
And you know
for
what's
quitting.
interesting is that
Let's
these
give
type
some
of
context too.
yeah,
Let's
these
let's
type
go
of
back in
treatments
history.
have been around for generations. It's been around
Years.
for years. And so cannabis is actually considered a psychoactive plant once you burn it and decarb it. And so the cannabis was way back founded in China. I can't remember when, but Wuhan and all them used to use it.
It dates back far, right? It's like
Yeah.
15th centuries type
Yeah.
stuff.
And excuse my non-proper English while I'm talking about this sort of stuff, but
Sure, that's the thing too, is like this show it's open. It's about watching us grow over time, the value that comes from these conversations. And you're never too young to think of a topic that's intellectual or maybe above what you thought you could think about before. Because when you do push yourself to think that way, you're going to gain so much more in the end.
Right, even if you just look at 5 articles and you start getting some true background, you start to
But
open
it's-
your eyes. I think a lot of it is just misguided and misled by the
Correct.
media.
no.
And I
yeah.
think, like, when you think of, if we were to bring up psychedelics around, and maybe even in a school environment, you
Oh,
would
they
be
would go
frowned
ape.
upon.
They'd go, yeah.
I mean, I think people just don't ever.
They don't have the right
I think
information.
that people were. I'm not saying no one. I think it's.
Yeah.
A lot of the people are influenced differently and heavily by just different stereotypes around different things.
And if you've noticed
100%.
recently what we have going on, we're just going to talk briefly about this, but
Yeah.
just the media is totally putting so many different things out there that it's so confusing for people even to know what the truth is anymore.
I agree completely. I don't even know when the last time I've watched the news. I mean, I can't. I don't.
I mean, dating back in the United States, look, right? We come out of this. All these cultures and all these other things are using plant medicine and making all these great observations and declarations in the scientific field. Then we hit the 1900s, right?
And then it
that
totally
medicine
gets
is
backtracked.
normalized, blah, 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 this and that. And then you're right.
Then we hit up the 1970s when
Yep.
Nixon
Yep.
decided to do, what was that? The
Controlled Substances Act. And he basically put all these into Schedule 1. He fucking felonized all of these substances which were previously for centuries being used as medicine and used for things such as psychotherapy and helping treat people with their symptoms. And then all of a sudden, because why? Immigration control. Because your administration, your cabinet pushes you.
It's
he
literally
completely
racism.
flipped. Yeah. Yeah.
Literally.
100%.
That's what the principles are based on, because even the research that they are coming up with to say that, oh, cannabis, LSD, and shrooms or psilocybin is bad. And it's interesting that all of the research coming back was saying, no, actually, it's not bad. It's really beneficial. And yet Nixon was still like, well, screw that information.
Also,
I'm
we
just
need to
gonna
talk
say
about, too, in
it's
the
a
50s
Schedule
and
1
60s,
drug.
the CIA during Project Midnight was quite literally using these same psychedelics to learn their abilities. What they were really trying to get at with that project was, can we use psychedelics to mind control our enemies? Can we use it how they might use it on us if they were to attack us? And all the studies came out with and showed was that these were actually being used and were helping people and were a breakthrough thing. So then that project goes away or goes to the wayside, and all of a sudden, you're right, Nixon comes out and all this, and they start to fucking close things down because of agendas and because of wants and this and that. And frankly, it hasn't been till right about now, up until the late 2000s, that we have really started to see a shift and the conversation opening up. And I think a lot of that is due to the move towards legalized cannabis and the move towards people discovering for themselves what's
Sure.
real.
I think one of the main things to point out too is in psychiatry, I don't think there's been many new drugs, if any, created since the
Great
1980s. I
Great
mean,
point.
you have, SSRIs,
Right.
which is selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, right?
And
That
that's
was
what we're using to deal with mental health right now.
I mean, that was in the 1980s. There's been no new things. I don't understand where.
Right.
It's,
You would
you know-
say, I mean, if it was really that great, cars would still be running off the 1980s models, right? Like you would think, wouldn't it, all the industries want to
Medicine
change
changes all the time, and there's new research to back.
Well, and the main reason for that, again, and sorry to interrupt there.
no,
Molly,
you're fine.
But the main reason, again, if we go to look at the Nixon Act, right, in 1970s,
Mhm.
and that's a large reason. I mean, with how far this stuff has come and the possibilities. I mean, if we were working on it for over the last, if we had it 30 years, we were working on
If
this.
we could
I mean,
have been doing research for
right.
the last 30.
if we could have been doing research, which after
Think of
that
how
after
far we
that
would have
law after that law passed in 1970s with Nixon, I mean, there was no money being poured into this. I mean, the amount of people and topics you could bring up you could count on one hand.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? That would even be
100%.
trying to research this or trying to figure out things. There was really limited, no money, and really at this point, the only way to do research are going to be private companies
Funded.
or governments, and unfortunately, I mean,
We talk about that loss leader principle all the time, and this is an industry with no exception to that. In order to really get case studies done, in order to be doing the valuable and effective data and research that needs to be
You
driving
have to
this
do it
country,
yourself,
you have to do it yourself, and you have to have the funds.
and you have to look
It
at a
takes a
bunch
lot.
of different articles if you're just doing research online. But what you're saying right there is with the funds is that's you're doing literally your own research of growing whatever it is that you want to be doing, and then you're taking it and just seeing what
Yeah.
the reactions are. And it's interesting that in the studies that they were talking about with the psychiatrists, they want someone there, but at the same time, the only way the LSD or the psilocybin works is if there's someone that you trust and love that's with you that you're able to talk about the experience with and that you feel comfortable with.
right, and I think it's again, we're talking in minimal amounts. You
Oh,
know what
yeah.
I'm saying? In controlled
It's only 25 to 30
environments.
milligrams.
Controlled environments.
Yeah, very minimal doses. And I wanted to cite here some data and research that we had done. If anyone knows, Johns Hopkins, one of the oldest institutions in the country, as of last year, has opened up a psychedelics wing for psychotherapy and research deeper diving into this topic.
And this
I
is
mean,
far along. Okay, now we're
Truly.
talking about. We have even things such as big pharma investing in these things. They're
Yeah.
seeing that. It's.
We're-
I
there's
think
a
there's
transition.
people out there in this field that see the benefits from psychedelics and how far that is, and they're willing to. Honestly, they need big pharma, because there's no way to supply it fast enough. There's no
They have
chain.
the market, right? Gary Vee said it so well. I was listening to a talk of his, and he was like, right, while you build your product, what are you going to need at the end of the day? Get it in the hands of the consumers. That's what I have.
Right.
All of a sudden, you might have something, but I have all the value.
And I think lots that are in this field
That's
that
big
are
pharma right now.
yeah, lots that are in this field and that are behind it see the benefits and are willing to allow big pharma just to do it because they want these benefits to be out to the people.
Now, here's my biggest hope. Here's a big concern that I think we should really talk about. Similar with these 1980 SRSIs or whatever, the SSRIs, we got to do this in a way that's ethical and that keeps the interest and the respect of these plants in mind. What do I mean by this? If we look at
and
the
how do we
deserts
do
and we
that?
look at these shamans and everyone who's doing psychedelics
They
and
do it
leading these
medically.
ceremonies, they do it medically, but they do it leading with spirit first and respect for the plants and respect for the
I mean,
person.
if you want to, you can even just go and look up some people that have been done in these studies and cases. I mean, they've had life-changing experiences.
I wanted to.
I have too.
I mean, the main thing is when you think about it, when you take a psychedelic, right, it's allowing your brain to connect and talk to other parts of your brain that never talk,
Right.
right?
And the crazy thing is, in all of the research, the brain is showing foreseen connections being left afterwards, right? They're not only are these people's mental states being adjusted in the short term, but there's quite literally new synapses firing in their brain, and it's making connections that are long lasting. I mean, you can't tell me that's not interesting. That's not something that we should be studying more, right? Elon Musk and them, they're so worried about synapses. They're so worried about these same processes in the brain. Well, if we can get something from plant medicine that gets us to produce effects, shouldn't we want to be studying that from more of a neurological level to really understand more?
Sure. I mean, and this is huge. When you think about, you can just look at this year alone, 2020. Anxiety disorders found in the United States. I mean, anxiety is within the
How high
population.
is
I mean, 18% of the population has anxiety. Okay, they have an anxiety disorder just in the U.S. alone. Okay, in 2020, prescriptions for anti-anxiety have increased by over 10.2% from 2019. 10.2%.
From 2019 alone.
Yeah, prescriptions from antidepressants have also increased in 2020 by 9.2 compared to 2019.
Yeah, here we go. Cited directly from ADAA, which is the Anti-Anxiety and Depression Association of America. They say, in the United States, anxiety disorders are the most common mental health illness, affecting 40 million adults in the United States, ages 18 and older, or 18.1% of the population, which is insane.
Well, and I think the biggest thing to point out here is Pfizer, one of the well-known brands. I mean, they've
one of the big four of big pharma.
Right. I mean, they've been a hold of all the antidepressant and anxiety meds for how many years, right? They're in control. They're too far in control, and I think that's the reason why some of this stuff hasn't been developed so far.
True.
And I think something that's really substantial is, people right now when they're taking these prescribed medications that they have for antidepressant and stuff like that, after just taking it for 2 weeks, they can build a tolerance for it, right? It's a tolerance just like nicotine is, okay?
Right.
And with that tolerance, there's withdrawal symptoms. If you want to ever stop from that, there's withdrawal symptoms. So now you're held to this drug.
Right.
And I think we have to realize right now this is so large. I mean, the big pharma can't even keep up with the demand of the prescriptions going out for antidepressants.
Right.
Okay, that's I don't even understand it.
Right. It's like when are we gonna stop? Like, this can't be the best solution. If it's just requiring that more people start doing it and get on it and stay on it, is that really a solution, or is that just trying to come up with a mediary solver?
Right. And if we call a solution with a drug that has side effects such as suicide thoughts, dizziness, drowsiness, vomiting, and insomnia, among many others, how is that a solution?
We should point out the fact that psilocybin does have some after effects that may seem negative,
true.
whereas some people don't always
true.
know
It's
how, or LSD, you don't know how these people are going to react to it. And you have to be really safe, in particular with, forget the exact term for it, but people with schizophrenia or bipolar that
How they
group,
handle these substances.
just how their mind is, how it just goes everywhere and you can just flip on a dime. Those sort of people, I forget the exact category name for those disorders. Those people you have to be very careful with dealing with psilocybin and stuff like that, because they could just flip.
Sure, and
And
I'm
you
not
don't know
saying-
what's going to
I'm not
happen.
saying psychedelics are something you roll out immediately right now.
No, and that's why-
this
that
is
a
the
very
thing where I
long
said the
process.
ethical thing.
Yes.
This can't be like SSRIs where you run to Walgreens and you just fucking grab it at the counter.
No,
right?
it has to be something that you do with loved
how does
ones,
this
that you
process
have
work?
a
What would it look like,
psychiatrist. So
Talk
I
to that a little
actually,
bit.
I wrote down some ideas because with my cannabis shop, I want to have places where people can smoke or consume psilocybin. And so what
we should share too. We are in the state of Illinois.
Yeah.
And currently that is a legal thing in our state.
Well,
For
currently
both
we're
recreational and medical.
working. Yeah, it is recreational and medical, but we're working on having places to consume indoors. Bloomington, Illinois, was actually going to be the first place to have an indoors cannabis consumption
They
site,
didn't
but
open because of COVID.
yep,
Yes, correct. We got slowed down, so we're waiting to see how legislation plays out in this upcoming year, as well as for them to open up and sort of. They're going to be the testing.
I will say that's one of the good things J.B. Pritzker has done.
yeah.
Of course, yeah. It was sort of the one thing that made sure that each side had people that were going to pull him.
And I think when we're doing these studies and sitting down, and Lily, I would love to understand the process more and get more in depth at that. But when they're doing these studies, again, this isn't a very loose thing. I mean, there's studies upon studies, and
No,
it's
they're
all
not doing it
very
like they're not doing it like the COVID vaccine where it came out in January and they're already out to the public. We're talking phases A, B, C, and D, and that's before trial 1, 2, and 3. You
right.
get what I'm saying?
I mean, we have even prescription drug companies such as I think it's what is it? I can't think of it, but I'm going to find it by the end of the podcast. But there's a prescription drug company that's already in phase 2 trials.
oh yeah, I know.
You know what I'm saying? They're already into phase 2 trials, and they're a prescription drug company, not including all the private companies that are in stage 3 trials, and they're seeing effects. Okay, I mean, they're doing like there's even people that are coming
Here
in
we
and
go.
doing
Here's the
systematic
company.
reviews.
It's Teva Pharmaceutical Industry Ltd. Their NYSE is TEVA, and that is a company that is currently one of the big 4 pharmaceuticals, and they are actually moving in and getting into the psilocybin and psychedelic market. And they're Israel-based pharmacy giant, and they've declared as of what is this? As of June 4th, 2020, they are fully in the psychedelics game.
One of the titles I read of an article I read was a systematic review of psychedelic-assisted psychotherapy for mental health, an evaluation of the current wave of research and suggestions for the future. Okay, this is where they're going into in-depth studies on what the current practices are of even doing these studies and going through and making sure that there's quantitative results that indicate that psychedelics can significantly reduce clinical outcomes associated with these mental health conditions. Okay, they are seeing results in outcome, and that's what's so important, and that's now why I think we're seeing these big drug companies start to enter in, because they're seeing it, right? And
you know what's scary about those big drug companies coming in is that they're going to take over, and they're not going to have what's best for the people, but what's best for their own interests and what's best for making the most amount of money.
Well,
and that's what we're seeing with the cannabis industry as well.
And that's exactly why I don't think big drug companies should have this thing.
No,
I think this should
don't
be a
think
slow
so at
process.
all. I think so too.
Because this should be released very slow, so that we're making sure it's being in good hands. Like Chad was saying, it's being done right. It's not.
Lil, I want to go back to this before we keep going forward. How would it look? What is a way that both people have talked about this going on and being done, and what do you think could be improved, or things that we should talk about before we really have divulged into this field? How should it go? Because a lot of this is a conversation of, well, this is how people have tripped in their private homes, and this could help. And a lot of it is, how do we tie it into Western culture and psychotherapy?
Sure, like Lily, and I would love to maybe see your knowledge and like what is maybe a psychedelic trip that's controlled look like, right?
Nice.
Okay, so my idea basically is just having a room. Since it's not regulated yet, I don't know how the laws are actually going to play out, but in my own head, it makes sense that you reserve a space that the door locks, and it's a controlled space where everything is maybe padded, but not necessarily padded like a prison room,
Sure.
And so people can go in and reserve a spot. Maybe there's a therapist in there. Maybe they're just outside the door and waiting if something happens. And it's just a couple of people, very close people, they reserve.
So that you would pick, right?
No, if they want to trip and they put in the paperwork, they say, I want to work on this. This is something I want to go through. These are the people I want to have. Sure. Then it's just a pre-apply to then you look at their paperwork.
But you bring
make
your
sure,
own people is what
yeah, and you make sure that they have a psychiatrist too. That there's going to be those type of people there to help. So there's on-hand
staff that's professionally trained to take care of it.
Yeah,
but the idea is,
you know what I think though, with cannabis, when you get your medical cards, you have to have your therapist, and then you have to have a doctor that you go to and they sign, and.
Sure.
So I think it should be the same type of concept where you're seeing a therapist for a long time.
I wouldn't agree with like rolling it out. I think we're still far from it being in a public setting.
I think it is still very far from that. But I think
we're 5 years. I think how eventually it would play out, and once it's but right now we're doing even these studies that are controlled. there's someone, maybe not like a medical professional, but an assistant
They
in there,
call
right?
it, the idea
Do you
is called
wanna-
an attendant.
An
Having-
attendant, right? And these attendants, like these studies that are done, if they won't even take the results of the patients if they move at all. Right?
Yeah.
You have to be in a complete still environment. It's being controlled very well right now.
And it doesn't even have to be a controlled environment, but we can hit back on that just for how to use psilocybin. But were you asking about immediate of how it's going to play out once it's become legalized where people can use
I guess
psilocybin,
more right now,
or
I
just
was
when it's
referring to like
more
the
open to the
testing that they're
public?
doing right now and how
Yeah.
that looks.
So
Go
the
ahead.
testing is more of, like you were saying, you have a participant in the room as long as with someone else that
And
you're
you're saying
comfortable
eventually
with.
we could get rid of that assistant, you think?
Yes, I think what we're seeing and what we from the research I've done is in the stage trials now, a lot of what's happening is you're at your home actually, and it's an in-house physician and or an attendant that you assign that joins you. You're given a dose from a psychiatrist or therapist who comes to your house. They then are optionally allowed to stay and or the psychiatrist leaves, but you are left with a caretaker and attendant. And what's supposed to happen is the person lays down, they take the dose that was requested, and they start a process or something. So that's where the Western medicine might come in. You might set up or create a process or a phase that they go through during their trip to make sure that they get the illicit effects or the illicit emotional response that they want to cure out of it. Then you let them just go. And you really are there more holding their hand. And if they squeeze you, it might mean that they're scared or they're bracing for a tough moment. And at that point, you're there and you just squeeze back. And it's just showing care and allowing the person to basically live and exist in their own space. And sort of, that's the thing about this too that I think is so interesting. SSRIs and psychotherapy thus far is about dealing with it with someone. Psychedelics and plant medicine might be the first opportunity to deal with something on your own.
And I think it allows people to do that. I think it's in a situation for depression and stuff like that. It allows you to have this different state. And when you gear it towards even with as far as these things, right? These patients that are going in there to get these psychedelic treatments are also having an additional counseling after that to talk through their problems and help realize different ways to look at life.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And be optimistic.
Yeah.
And I think that combined thing is very powerful. But one of my big things, I guess I have a question for you guys is, now that I think, again, if we rush into commercialization, I think we're
We could
down
do
for
it
some big
wrong.
problems.
Correct.
And
Yeah.
how do we now make sure that maybe big pharma and stuff like that is not the one being in the supply chains, or is it already too late?
I feel like it
I think
might be too late
I
just
agree
because
with
it's
you.
so hard to
I agree
control
with you.
big companies, because a lot of people don't know what's going on. A lot of people, even if they know what's going on, they just feel so helpless that they
For them, it
don't
comes
think
down
they
to
can do anything.
money, really.
For them, it comes down to the government and putting in regulations. But big pharma basically runs the government, so there's no way to even do anything.
Sure. And I think that this is a case of if you can't beat them,
Be
join
bigger
them,
than them.
and you join them in hopes and anticipation that when you join them, they allow you to have creative vision and are just the partner with the money and the resources.
And you would hope for that,
And
but
you
I
need
just
to, when you approach them, you need to make sure that you're doing it in a way where you're leveraging your processes and your knowledge and your research, so that way because they have the money and they can get in this at any day.
And they're
But
there
if
to
you're
make
ahead,
more
when
money.
you win.
when we often put inflation from these big pharma companies. I mean, these are plants you can get from all around the world.
Like they
That's
exist. They grow.
interesting, though.
You know what I'm saying? Do we
That's part
think
of it
like
that's
I
interesting.
think this can be at a very affordable rate. I don't think you need to have these excessive, but again, you're going to
Oh,
pay for
no,
that
yeah.
research. But I'm thinking eventually this could become like kind of like a Tesla thing, where it's going to be the transportation will be so cheap.
I
and
think
so minimal.
this is going to beat out big pharma's terrified because plants like this are duplicatable and so easy to grow and so easy to take. You don't need to go through a whole lab to process it. You can just go from ground to mouth.
And big pharma is the
and
one
big
that
pharma is terrified because the market cap and the ratio of return.
they're going to
the
lose
return
so
on
much
investment on the
money
product,
because of
you'll
all
lose.
of the products they put in for antidepressants, like you were talking about at the beginning. All those drugs that they're putting money in for, it can be solved by cannabis. It can be solved by LSD. It can
And
be
that's
solved
the big
by
thing. I think one of the main
psilocybin.
things too is because I've looked into even along with Chad, we've looked into the whole Elon Musk Neuralink stuff, right? But the same things that we're saying those Neuralinks can fix, there's even research to show that psychedelics can change those things
Mm-hmm.
as far as cancers and
This is a great point to bring up.
Alzheimer's
I wanted to
and like all that kind of stuff. If we can use a natural thing from the earth
Yep.
to fix those things rather than any controlled or handmade thing, isn't that the best way to go? Natural, right?
You might ask why in the short term this needs to happen. The reason this needs to happen in the short term is because we need to show our federal government and our local agencies that, hey, we're all fucking adults here. These are plants, and we need to return. I wrote this idea and this concept down. We need to return decades before how we were, like in Asia when we discovered it. We need to return to plant medicine. Because do you know how many species of plants outside of even the psychedelics we're talking about or that we've discovered thus far could help and could have benefits?
Insulin was found on a piece of bread on accident in a
Literally.
laboratory.
Literally. So
I mean, why are we criminalizing? I mean, 1978. How is this? How is LSD?
LSD.
I'm sorry, I didn't know.
You're fine.
How is that even able to be criminalized? Like, I mean, there's been millions
He
of people that
fought
have gone to
so
jail
hard
that
to
have
make
gone to
it
jail just for
illegal.
cannabis. You know what I'm saying? Like, how is that acceptable?
Okay,
And
so
now it's
you know
think
how
we might be
with
ranting too.
the Hispanics, it was the war on drugs because of racism. It's the same thing now. The African Americans in this country are being totally. What's the correct word for what I'm trying to say?
I would say
Brutalized. No.
I would say. Are you trying to say that they're being ignored in this space?
Incarcerated. They're being incarcerated
Oh,
for.
You're
just-
saying the rate of return on incarceration
Yeah,
comparatively
from
to
white
whites for
to
just
African
the same
Americans
use.
is insane for
Oh, yeah.
cannabis. Yeah,
sure.
it's
The
just
same
a
thing for
race
psychedelics, too.
war.
If you,
That's all it is.
If you look at the data, there was.
I wouldn't say it's all, but
I'll link it.
But most of it, it's a war on money and it's a race war. That's really what it is. When you see these big companies coming in and making it extremely hard for anyone without any cash to make it, and there's no sorry, the mic or the headphone cut out.
Yes,
But there's no I lost my rant.
You were talking about the studies done between arrest rates and incarceration rates between blacks and whites.
I don't know. It's gone.
Substances. All right, that's totally okay. But I wanted to keep going on this idea of the depression, and I wanted to cite a little bit here of what Johns Hopkins had done. So in one of their studies they conducted, they had 51 cancer patients. Half of the patients were given a placebo, meaning a non-psychoactive psychedelic that they thought they were taking, and half of the group was given a non-placebo. They were actually given psilocybin. And then in the study, they broke it down to small dose and high dose. And the rate of return, and the study quite literally cites saying, those who received a high dose of psilocybin, not the placebo, showed better outcomes, aka meaning anxiety, better outcomes with dealing with depression, and long-term results in actually being able to cope and move on from it.
It's interesting too because during the test they had their brain scanned, and you could totally see a difference in the brain activity as well, and it was everywhere in the brain, whereas the placebo was just in the prefrontal cortex. And speaking on different illnesses it helps with, psilocybin actually really helps with PTSD as well, because it really helps you look at the matter in a different light, and it really helps you just accept what happened, and it doesn't necessarily get rid of it,
look at
but
the situation from a different perspective. I think
Exactly.
when you're doing intribbing with psychedelics, you're able to see and realize, and I think that's where even psychedelics, it gives that vision of hope for someone, right? To see that there is something beyond that. And I think then having a counselor after that to talk about that and guide your thoughts, I think it can be very, very helpful. And I think we've seen that be very helpful.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
No, I think a long-term goal of this, and I might have already said this, but making sure that we are unscheduling these substances so others don't feel afraid to go out, explore, find new species of plants, and be doing more studies and finding new things. Because I don't think
at the
we've
same
used all
time,
the
they're
resources
doing
or
it in a
discovered
safe
everything.
way because they're informed and they know how
Correct.
to do it. You know, the one thing that I think school failed us on is they said, stay away from this stuff, don't do this stuff, but then they didn't say why.
Yeah.
They said it a little bit, but it was just, it seemed like it was too much, like it wasn't real. You know, with cannabis, they're like, stay away from it. It makes your inhibition
And
go
this all
down. It
comes
makes
back
all this other
to-
bad things happen, and that's
this all
not true.
Comes back to, 1950s, 20 years before they criminalized this, there was lots of research being done to psychedelics.
Tons.
Okay, it's people that block out, and there are bad people in this world, and unfortunately, you're never going to be able to change that, which we hope eventually. But again, it comes back to that. We could have been so far along with this stuff, and it's being misguided. And I think just like going through the school system, right? They misguide you.
I think something that we don't.
And we try to always go down one right way. Like
Yes.
it's a very like the life we live in. It's like whoever governs you is the right way.
You guys are talking about something I really wanted to hit during this episode, and it's what these psychedelics really make people do, and it's something that we don't do in the United States and schools don't teach us, and that is facing your fears.
Mm-hmm.
Do you guys do that? Like, I think that's really why the people get through it, because psychedelics, they break your walls down. They take you to a place where you are so vulnerable that you are afraid of the idea and the conception of being matter in this world we live in, to the point where vulnerability is the biggest fear that you face. Therefore, anything that you faced before all of a sudden becomes a method and a way to cope with what the unknown is.
Sure.
It's crazy. Do you think that maybe in the United States, fear or having open discussions about fear in our lives is something we don't do enough?
Oh,
And do you think psychedelics
I
are
think-
really just doing that?
I think growing up in an American society, and I not knowing any other societies or cultures, I think in America we
Talk
make
about
people
facing fears.
facing fears, or let's say you're scared about something, right? Everyone's just there to comfort you right away instead of finding ways and solutions to deal with your problems. I mean,
Right.
there's a reason why I'm at where I'm at with my businesses. It's because every time I had a problem or a situation, I didn't let it bring me down. I found ways to cope with it, get around it, and keep moving. In America here, we just try to go and comfort people. And, oh, it's okay.
You know, it's funny you say that, because I find the adverse effect. I think that people in America are really just harsh and rude, and they just go after you. And if you are like a little sparkling sunlight, they just fucking take their foot and crush it. Especially in the school system with children nowadays, and the electronics and all that. People are brutal. That's a big point that I think we miss, is just teaching our kids how to be kind.
Well, and that's one of the other things,
And
too.
I feel
mean,
like
I agree
psilocybin
that
will
point, but I think
definitely
it's
help
both.
with that. It'll bring more humanity to humans.
Yeah. And I think that humanity comes only after you face
Adversity.
or fear.
Sure,
Yeah.
and I think one of the main things, like you said, okay, yeah, that's very true. There are people that are going to stomp on you and gut wrench you, but you've got to raise your kids, and I think a large effect of how people grow up is how they're raised. I think that's what it comes back to.
It's
But I
interesting
think also, like you were saying, when you're getting stomped on, I just want to finish this point. When you're getting stomped on, you need to be, when you're growing up, you should be taught how to react in those situations. So that's where I say, sure, people always come to comfort, but I think if you were raised differently to deal with those situations and look at life differently, we wouldn't even need to have that ability of comfort, because those little problems that now you're feeling like, oh, wow, this is a big weight on my shoulders, really were never a big problem. I think a lot of people try to make these littlest mistakes. I mean, you could not be here the next day, right? What's the point in stressing over something so minimal in your life?
Not everyone realizes that, though, in the moment when they're stressing.
And I think that's what you got to keep reminding yourself. And I think that's like, with me, I'm
Do you
such a
guys think-
strong-headed brain,
Yeah.
and I try to constantly keep reminding myself of the things. So again, it's the environment you're around.
you just need to keep that little voice in your head
You do,
constantly going, because
100%.
there's
And
other
I
thoughts
think
that come
sometimes
in.
when we
but
lose that voice, psychedelics can be that voice.
that voice, is
Definitely.
at the forefront. And that's why psychedelics is a lot like meditation. That's why when you meditate, you're able to think clearly.
And I
It's
think-
the same type of processes.
Yeah,
just
and I think
completely
right now there's
different.
just so many contributing factors to pushing you down, like you're saying,
Mhm.
right? Like there are. So I'm able to, like, that's just being like, it's hard to be a strong-headed person and keep that extra voice in your head constantly. And I think because there's so many things that are constantly keep pushing you down, you just were never raised to deal with those things. So I think part of that was honestly, just with my own personal experience, it's how you're raised and how you can start to deal with those issues. But I'm not saying what your point is completely correct. Now, because how a lot of people have come up and been raised, we need to comfort them. But again, people never, I don't think, direct or comfort the right way. A lot of people, you have to comfort someone, but allow and see the vision for direction, and that there is a possibility to get around this.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
So schools started a long time ago, and schools actually are the most interaction that kids get with their development stages. It's the place that they are at the most. It's really who shapes people.
And that's sad.
But
For me,
so
I think.
I want to ask is, do you think the world was kind before school came in, so then children were just around each other and children were mean to each other?
I think they were less aware of things. I don't think
Okay.
they were aware of as many things. And I also think back then there wasn't enough. Again, I think technology and how this stuff has all come along, this could have been very good. And I'm saying it hasn't been good. a lot of these things we've created could have been good, but there's people that turn these good things
They've
bad.
been male manipulated.
Yes. So I'm saying all those things. I also don't, I'm not going to say that it was better back then because you also weren't aware of so many other things. You didn't have guidance in certain directions. And I think those are two
I
completely
just
different
mean the school itself. Do you think it had an effect on the psychological mind into becoming a harsher human in general because of growing up with kids? Like, say someone grows up being constantly bullied, and say that's what the scenario was after these kids started getting to school and then kids started being mean. Do you think if kids never had to go to school, if they were just inside their house, or would that be another topic for another day?
Okay, I may not be understanding correctly your point you're trying to make there, but what I think of, I guess, is when I think, okay, so my grandma and how she was raised in school, when you think back, schools were more harsher
Well, you're
with their
saying
disciplines.
before
right?
that the children are around their parents and that's who decides what their traits are going to be, where that's not necessarily true, that when you go to school that usually determines the person you're going to be.
Right. So, like, the other thing too, I guess, well, I'm not maybe following that point exactly. What I am kind of getting from this is, like, for me, when I think about it, school back then was harsher and there was a lot more discipline within schools, right? So now we're making this topic of there was a point of where now we have to comfort kids, but I think, I mean, people have come so much far developed. When I look at someone like my grandma or any these older ages, right, and these people that have been grown up in different times, their ability to think and react to situations is different. So I think maybe harder discipline is right, but it's got to be the correct discipline, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I want to change topics here for a little second here. I want to get into the idea of our next administration coming into office and what that could mean. Do you guys think, or let's hypothetically have a conversation here for a second on the idea of the scheduling of our drugs currently, and do you think that's going to shift with our new administration coming into office? Do you think that this will be decriminalized? Do you see it going full to recreational? Do you see minuscule steps? What do you guys think?
I was really excited when Biden was getting in because I thought that it was going to be a revolution for cannabis and all these other drugs to really start getting the research and the backing and to really start playing into our society more. But the more I think about it, the more I'm really thinking that maybe cannabis will be legalized medically, but everyone who uses it recreationally ends up using cannabis medically in some facet, or some form. So I think that cannabis should be recreational in the sense that it will become medical eventually. So if you just make cannabis medical right away, I think that's most likely how it's going to become federally legalized by Joe Biden and Kamala Harris.
So do you think we're on a small ladder step track where each step
is I think
is
so.
like
I thought we were going to be full blown, but now
I would say our current
it.
politics are complete crap. I don't think you're going to see any of these goals or hopefuls we have. There's too many bad people in place, and I think that's where us as young people need to step up and make this huge change. We need to have a revolution of a change because there's too much bad guidance. I mean, when you think about it, sure. Any administration you think of, okay? There's so many loopholes of these companies to get in. I mean, our government policies and systems, they need to be updated. None of them are. I mean, the Constitution is not even rewritten, and it's said in the Constitution.
It was literally written in there to rewrite this thing.
Every 50 or 100 years, was it?
It was 100, I believe. But the point is we're even trying to relate these topics to this government. It's because we've all just been this is our route, right? We've been used to it. This is the only thing we know. When you think down in
change is scary.
Change is scary, but it needs to happen.
Yeah.
Because if you
But that's why a lot of things aren't changing, is because people are scared of it. People are afraid to see what's new and to see what works better.
Said the Constitution should be rewritten every 19 years.
19?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
I mean, if you look at policy, okay. So, and here's the other big topic. I mean, when you look
at back in the 1700s,
even with your safety, right? You have people that bring out the points. Defund the police, right? Why would you? Okay, I'm not saying the police system is correct. I'm not saying that.
But if you're gonna making sure that if your house is getting broken into, there's no cops.
No, here's the point. Here's the point, bro. It doesn't matter about that.
It should change.
It doesn't matter.
It should be rewritten.
I'm saying policies for police conduct and how that kind of stuff.
That's what
it should all be changed. Correct. If you defund it,
That's not change.
There's no money to be changing it. You're like, I mean, I don't even understand that. That doesn't
Right.
even make sense.
But we could talk about that on
Totally.
another podcast for sure.
Completely. And but yeah, I mean, it's just like bringing up governments and all kind of stuff. We're relating to something where like we want this change, but there's too many bad people in the way of us making those changes.
Yeah.
Right. And yeah, that's just, I mean, that's a whole other subject we can go into. But just understanding that the world we're living in right now, there's so much people that are misleading everyone, right?
Yeah.
And people are too scared to stand up to that of what anything they believe in, right? So then they live in this small circle of a world.
That's a great perspective. So I definitely see where you're going at there. So I think that's interesting. We got two perspectives. You think it could potentially happen through cannabis first, but then slow gradual steps. You see a different perspective maybe where it's a little more, hey, our administration is going to be at a standstill. They're a big talk, not really much done. I think
we're going to go like,
I mean, I think what we'll see is I think we could see an administration where executive order happens to make sure that these are no longer Schedule 1, but I don't think they will be fully decriminalized. I think they will be lowered down to a schedule where the FDA can regulate them for science research.
But I think we're commercializing it again too fast.
I agree.
That's the big point.
That's a big point here. I think for
that's
us
where we're going to be going wrong in the wrong direction again. Okay, I would rather not have any psychedelic research go further until the governments are changing. If it's going to go through the current government, because it's not going to be an ethical practice.
Yeah. You're entirely right. I think one thing, too, here is it's not to be defeated from this. There's things that we can do as people and as young citizens to make this type of change. You can be contacting your local officials. There are apps and softwares out there that let you speak to your representatives often and in an informed
people aren't aware. I mean, those are the things.
Let me give a shout out and a plug to this app.
Yeah.
I wanted to give a shout out actually to DMT, the spirit molecule. It is a documentary hosted by Joe Rogan, and it features Dennis McKenna, who is a founder and grower of psilocybin. And there's actually a convention in Wisconsin, Madison, Wisconsin. It's Consciousness Forum. It has a lot of information.
When is that convention? Is it annually or is it a one-time
convention? It's
convention?
annually. I believe it's in the spring. I can't remember what month exactly, but it has more information about psychedelics and the research and practices that they're coming to now. And
Probably,
if you really just want to learn more,
yep, big deal.
I think one of the big things, again, I'm more of a guy that I think we need to change huge world issues, and I think there's plenty of people in this world that are in positions to make a change. And for me, if you're in a position to change the world, to help those who need you most, why would you not?
I feel like
you
the
can
problem
choose to live in
is
everlasting change, or you can remain the problem.
the problem is we don't have the right people in power. We have the right
exactly,
positions of power to do that. We just don't have the right people in those positions.
Well, and again with that, and even there's private people. There's private networks with people with the amount of money. Okay, a lot of money changes people.
I mean, you're seeing Kevin O'Leary. He just invested in Mind Medicine, one of the leading players in the psilocybin space in the
and
U.S.
there's more people like Kevin O'Leary that could be donating. I mean, again, like I said, you're not promised tomorrow, but if you can leave an everlasting impact for a world of better, why would you not? I think we need to call out on even considering the private sectors. People need to have more of a voice. That's what we were all upon when we created this country.
So we're talking about that voice and how you as a listener can get out and really make sure that you're being active in your community. Here's how you can do it. There's apps like Cause, which Cause is an app that connects you to your local senators and representatives of your state. It gives you contact information and lets you know ahead of time what they'll be voting on. If something like this comes up for psychedelics, or you want to make sure that they're aware of this and are pushing for movements like this, you can contact them. Be making your voice heard. They're here to represent you and listen to you no matter your age, no matter if you vote or you can't. You want to know why? Because if you can't vote now, you're the future of their seat. You are going to be the one who can vote soon and who is going to matter. So talk to them. Get out. Do that. Here's some
legislation bills.
Read legislation.
When you see
Post
something
on social media. Talk to your others.
Right.
You know, just have open and
connect,
liberating
ask
conversations.
questions. When you see topics, it's not just a headline.
Yes.
I mean, when you see a bill, the amount of stuff that gets passed in them that people don't even realize.
I
Because no one reads bills thoroughly.
It was like over 155 pages for the bill for the next COVID relief that didn't go through recently.
I mean, the amount of stuff that's in there that is ridiculous. And when you realize this stuff, people like want these changes, right? And no one looks at the financial stability behind it. Someone's got to pay for it, okay? You're either paying for it down the road in your taxes, right? Or the same thing with if we defund the police, like I was saying on that topic. Well, these police standards, they still have to hold up to something. So guess who's ending up paying for this? The people that live in those towns and counties. They're going to have to pay for it, those forces. So now guess who's going to get taxed to pay for these changes? You, instead of the government.
I would say that if you don't know how to read legislation or laws and stuff like that, I would definitely recommend having your phone by you and just looking up every single word and then rewriting the sentence or that you don't understand to try
that's what I do when
and
I
Read it 15
understand.
times. By the 15th, you'll comprehend something in there.
That's
Something.
definitely what
And
I
this is
do
the thing, a
because
lot
I
of
have a
people-
hard time understanding laws. Go
Like
ahead.
what was something was really beneficial for me is when I started reading books. If
Which you
just recently.
tell, yeah, yeah. Let's
I
give
mean,
some
that
context.
that was just recently, but that also okay. I mean, if we want to touch on books, I think knowledge is key, guys.
Yeah.
All of our listeners, you need to
Read just like 15
this is not.
to
We're
20
not Ty
minutes a
Lopez
day.
here, but he's kind of right when he fucking says that.
Okay, I think one of the things I was actually telling Jake, one of our good friends, he actually works for my company as well.
He'll be on.
Yeah, he will be. He will be awesome. But I was telling him last night, I was like, what was I going to say? But, I lost the train of thought. But basically, my point was, I don't even remember.
You were
Where was I
talking to
tracking?
Jake last night.
No, I know. But before that, what was I
Were
tracking?
you trying to inspire him or something?
No, knowledge. Okay, knowledge.
Yeah.
Right? Our NEMT business, right? We read one book by the man named Joel Davis. It was $99. That $99 we spent, I think actually allows my business to make millions of more dollars a year than I planned before. Okay. When I read the book, my first book, which I actually read, when I went through school again, that's why when I grew up through the school system, I didn't really take it seriously. There were great fundamentals you get along with that, but I saw past a lot of that stuff. And again, I think that needs to be updated, but reading that book, it gave me knowledge. It allowed me to look at life differently. So if you're constantly seeking knowledge, you're gonna get smarter. That's the only way. If you're seeking knowledge, that's the only way you're gonna get smarter. Or personal experiences, hands-on experiences. That's how you're gonna get smarter. And if you don't take those actionable steps to be more knowledgeable, well, that's your own fault.
Some people are intimidated though about learning and just going through that
and
process.
You have to find what you're
information.
interested about. And then, like what I was going on in the point is when I'm reading through a book, if I don't know a word, I don't just read past it. I look up that word to understand what the definition is, so I can be more an intelligent speaker and speak properly. Right? Be more educated. Right? By just understanding what that new word means, it opens my mind up to so many different things, and it also lets you're able to understand the context of the book. But those are just brief subjects. I think there's a lot we can dive into, and I think this first episode it's been really exciting. I think this is a topic we could still expand on. But thank you, Lily, for joining today.
Yeah.
Chad.
I want to thank Lily for joining us today, and just to wrap it up here, let me close in our topic and our discussion here. This is a conversation about making instrumental and monumental change, not only in the way that we view medicine and we view plants and we view our connection to earth, but the way we view our connection to each other and our connection to mental health and our connection to lasting and impactful change, whether that be personal or that be social change. This is an industry with a current market cap over $277,000.9 million in 2019 alone. There's projected growth of upwards of $6,859.95 million by 2027. It's projected to have that much growth. For an industry with that much potential, it is key that when we're talking and discussing this, we're doing it in a way that is both ethical, respectful to the human, respectful to the plants, and respectful to mankind for long term, for our kids' generations and everyone moving past. And it's important moving forward that this is something that happens with both social normalities and the importance of doing it in a way that is accepting and not like SSRIs or current practices from our pharmaceutical industry. In short, we want to thank you guys again for coming out and listening to a humanistic perspective.
With one last thing, I think if you could take away anything, right, or have any hope, be honest with yourself. Be nice. We're all people. We're all here together. and educate yourself. If you can do 3 things, do that. Be nice, be honest, and educate yourself. What a great episode. I appreciate it. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, guys. I can't wait to help with the cannabis industry and the psilocybin industry and really just get it started in a healthy way.
And that'll close out Humanistic
Make sure to
Perspective,
follow us on
episode
Instagram
1.
at the Humanistic Perspective, at a Humanistic Perspective, and make sure to find us, reach out, and let us know how you're liking the program. Have a great day.
Thanks,
Bye,
guys.
folks.